Hey guys, I'm Dave, and thanks for checking out another episode of Debt Free Differently. So, I know that we're in the midst of a global pandemic right now, but in the hopes that things will become normal sooner rather than later, I wanted to share a few tips on how we saved a buttload of money on our wedding for those of you who might have a wedding that's on hold right now. I know that a lot of weddings have already been postponed this year, and I feel for you guys. If we want to try and be optimists about this and look on the bright side, maybe this will give you some more time to save up money or plan ahead for your wedding so that you're not continuing to pay for it after you say I do. A lot of couples start their lives together in debt or in even more debt because of their wedding, and I want to help you guys avoid that as much as possible. If you're watching this video, you're probably in a similar position as we were. No rich uncle, parent, or relative is paying for your wedding. You are. As a result, you're probably looking for ways that you can save some money, do your wedding on a budget, and still have the best time on your best day. I hope this video gives you some ideas that help you have not only the wedding that you want, but the wedding that you can afford. Of course, if you like this video or learn something new, please make sure to give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel to learn how to pay off debt and manage your money and even build wealth a little bit differently. Now let's get right into some wedding talk. Tip number 1, think outside of the box for your ceremony. Weddings and babies. These are two things that businesses know that they can get you to spend outrageously on. And when it comes to wedding venues and fancy event spaces like wineries or even some high-end breweries, they can often charge you more for a venue fee than you would pay for your whole wedding all in if you had your wedding somewhere else. When we got married, we lived in Northern California, one of the most expensive places in the United States to live. Wineries up there were charging $20,000 just for the air inside their venues alone. Nothing was included. For the record, that was significantly more than our wedding cost us all in, with venues, food, photographer, clothes, everything. And it wasn't just wineries. There were not great venues and event spaces that were wedding places that were charging $5,000 just for the air inside their venue alone. Nothing included. Also, a lot of these wedding venues had required vendors that you had to work with no matter what, and they charged an insane amount per head for the most basic wedding food that tastes the same as the wedding food you've had at every wedding you've ever been to. So instead of going the fancy wedding venue route, we got married in a redwood grove behind UC Berkeley. It costed us about $2,000, which is not a little amount of money, but it's a lot less than these venues were charging. And our venue probably could have sat about 300 people. We also looked at parks, gardens, and any interesting outdoor venues that we came across in our daily lives. They were cheaper, and I might be biased, but I think that they're a little bit more interesting because they're kind of a blank canvas for your day. Your wedding doesn't look exactly the same as the wedding that happened a few hours before. So basically, by avoiding the wedding venue markup, you can save a ton of money. Tip number 2, do your reception at a restaurant. This is my biggest tip that I give to any couple that is trying to do their wedding on a budget. Now, there is a caveat with this. If you go this route, your guests will probably have to drive from your ceremony to your reception. That being said, you can save a ton of money by buying out a decent restaurant for your reception instead of going with a default wedding caterer that you might be required to use. When you do a reception outside on your own, you often have a lot of small costs that start to snowball and add up. You'll probably need to rent tables, place settings, you'll have to get staff, a special event license, maybe an alcohol license, pay for trash. The list is pretty endless. That also introduces a bunch of potential variables if you're working with multiple vendors. Food might not arrive on time, there might be an issue with seating, or maybe the electricity doesn't work as well outside as you would have thought. It could be a headache, and you might need to get a planner for it, which adds in some additional costs. Restaurants have food, they have drinks, they have staff, and they'll probably give you the best people for your wedding day. They also have cups, they have plates, they have utensils, they have everything that your guests could ever need, and they won't run out because it's basically just a busy lunch or dinner for them. Because they'll have plenty of notice, they can absolutely handle a large crowd. Also, they're usually pretty thrilled to fill every seat in the house if your reception ends up being at a time where they'd normally be a little bit slower. So not only are restaurants convenient and up for the task, there are often no additional charges because it's a wedding. You'll just work out what the menu is with them beforehand, and then everything just runs pretty smoothly for them. It's just a busy time for them, but they don't have to take anybody's orders. It also removes some of the logistics. They probably already have a liquor license, and they're usually happy to rearrange the restaurant as needed if you ask. And the price per head usually ends up being a lot cheaper than a wedding venue. We bought out a restaurant in Oakland, ended up costing us $25 per head for multiple courses of food that we all chose. That $25 would probably barely cover salads, maybe appetizers at a wedding venue. And if you get lucky, maybe you can buy out one of your favorite restaurants that means something to you, or you can create a new memory here, and it's a restaurant that you can come back to on your anniversary. And we didn't even think about this at the time, but because the restaurant handled so many of the logistics for our wedding, we didn't even think about hiring a wedding planner. Tip number 3, save money on the little things. Every wedding is different, and I think it's more than okay to do things a little bit differently on the things that might not matter a whole lot to you. This can help you save a good amount of money so that you'll actually have money on the day after the first day of the rest of your life. For us, we prioritized having a great photographer, and we also wanted to make sure that our wedding party did not spend $1 on our wedding day, because it's basically a working day. If you've been in a lot of wedding parties or even just a few, you know that day can feel like work. On average in the United States, couples spend between $500 to $700 on wedding cakes, and some people spend a whole lot more. The cake wasn't a big deal to us, so instead we bought $200 of donuts from a local donut shop instead. They were pretty thrilled to have a special order, and they actually threw in extra because we bought a buttload of donuts in the middle of the day on a weekend. Not really their busiest time, so they were super happy. So it was the opposite of wedding markup. Instead of spending money on expensive thank you gifts for our wedding party that they may or may not use once they got home, we had everyone customize and order their own pair of sneakers that they got to wear to the reception, and they just got to take them home and use them in their everyday life. Custom flower arrangements weren't a big deal to us, so we literally went to Costco the night before, bought all the flowers that they had, gave them to the restaurant, and told them to just spread them out however they thought it made sense. It looked great, and no fish had to die from being in a centerpiece with a handful of marbles for one night. By making small changes like this for parts of the wedding that weren't particularly important to us, nor things that we'd probably even notice, we were able to save a good amount of money, but we also were able to achieve our goal of not having our bridal party pay for anything. We paid for their dresses and their tuxes and everything else that came with it, which made us feel really good. So decide what your priorities are. You can save a little bit here and a little bit there, and that can really add up. Tip number 4, consider different times. If you've already done a little bit of venue hunting, you've likely noticed that prices can change depending on the day of the week, along with if your event is in the morning, afternoon, or night. While you probably don't want to be that guy that does a wedding on a Tuesday afternoon, which your guests will absolutely complain to their friends about, you might be able to save a good amount of money by doing your wedding earlier in the day or later in the day, depending on the venue. For us, our venue was cheaper during the day than it was at night, and that also allowed us to work with our restaurant's cheaper lunch menu compared to their dinner menu. So we grabbed that 12 o'clock spot on a Saturday and saved a few $1,000s. Now don't get me wrong, I am all for weddings where you shut the place down and people are partying well into the next morning. But for us, we felt a little bit less pressure with a daytime wedding because it actually had an end time. A lot of this is just personal preference, but if you can be flexible about times that your wedding ends up happening, you might be able to save yourself a good amount of money. So those are just a few ways that we save thousands of dollars when planning our wedding, and I hope that those ideas will spark some new ones for you that can help you when you're planning the wedding of your dreams. Every wedding is different, and just by you guys being there, it will be unique. And I know that a lot of these events are on hold right now, but when it's time for your wedding, I hope that it's as special and incredible and amazing as you've always dreamed it would be. By planning ahead and finding places that you can save here and there, you can make sure that your wedding is something that you not only feel great about personally, but financially. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Debt Free Differently.